February is Black History Month, and who better to help kick it off than Scott Hamilton and Vincent Holmes, founders of Better Brothers Los Angeles. Better Brothers supports the Black LGBTQ community, and it's the organization behind the annual Truth Awards, which you'll hear about more in just a moment. Welcome, Scott and Vincent. Happy Black Pride Month.
Happy Black Pride Month.
Thanks, John. Happy
so
Black
I,
Pride Month.
I thought it'd be interesting to ask you both to name a Black LGBTQ figure, living or dead, that many people, maybe most people, wouldn't recognize, but has made a significant community contribution to the Black LGBT community. Anybody who wants to go first?
So I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm the oldest, so I can go. One of the things, and we'll talk more about the Truth Awards later, but one of the things we do is, as a result of that, is we find ourselves doing a lot of research on individuals, or just asking folk about individuals who've made contributions to the LGBTQ plus community, and particularly people of color. And one person that we came across a while ago that just really struck a chord with me was an individual by the name of Sir Lady Java. And Sir Lady Java was born back in 1943, is still alive, at least the last we've heard. She lives here in Los Angeles now. She was born in New Orleans, but she moved to Los Angeles. She was really a part of the sort of underground drag community. But one thing that she did was she was really critical in getting a LAPD police policy called, I think it was called Police Policy Number 9, overturned. And that policy prohibited individuals, essentially men, from impersonating women. And so, because so much of her work at the time was really doing drag, or what's called drag, um, she was really critical in getting that police rule overturned, going to court, and and getting that overturned, and still lives here in Los Angeles, and was a big trans advocate. And we were just amazed, because this is someone who was literally the age of my mom, and we had no idea that she even existed here in Los Angeles. So, one person that just immediately comes to mind that most people don't know about, but has done incredible work to really help move the trans activism forward.
So, how about you, Scott? What would yours be?
And for me, it would be Dr. Wilbur Jordan. He was one of the earlier physicians who identified one of the first cases of HIV/AIDS at the time, doing in heterosexuals here in Los Angeles at the start of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So Dr. Jordan, has his research and his advocacy, and helped to make sure he just recently retired from the Oasis Center over at King Drew Hospital. Um, but just his work around HIV and AIDS prevention and outreach, especially for young Black gay men, but as overall the Black community, making sure that the virus and the disease was front and center. So, Dr. Wilbur Jordan.
Then my person, I think, would be Polly Murray. You've no doubt heard of her, but I had never heard of her until just the other day when she was profiled on television. I think she was Ruth Bader Ginsburg was being interviewed for, I think, a Time television special, and she mentioned her. Polly was a trans civil rights activist, and she's also a lawyer, and credited by Ruth Bader in one of her cases for giving her the idea to use the 14th Amendment as defense in one of the first cases that the Supreme Court heard regarding women as victims of sexual discrimination. And one of the things I thought was interesting about her was that, back then, I think she was born in the 40s, so I don't know when she started realizing she was different, probably really young in age, but she described herself even back then as having, and this is her words, an inverted sex instinct that caused her to behave as a man attracted to a woman would behave. So, that's kind of, if you think about it, back then, people would really, that was a very foreign concept, and I'm surprised that she wouldn't say it. I think, but that's who came to mind for me because she was really new in my mind. Um, so Scott and Vincent, you guys founded a wonderful organization called Better Brothers Los Angeles a few years back. Tell us about Better Brothers and what inspired you to found it.
I'll go since Vincent wanted to use the age card the last time. In 2013 or 14, we had the idea. Well, actually, Vincent and our other co-founder, Elton Wise, actually had this first idea about taking a trip to out of the country with some guys, and I was just like, no one knows us. How are we going to do this trip? But we also, and that discussion was just around the need for community and doing something different and connecting. But also at the same time, here in Los Angeles, one of our community staples, the Catch One, was closing, which was owned by Jewel Tice Williams, which had been open for 40 plus years since the 1970s. And there really was no real place for us to gather. So we turned that energy of the trip into an idea of like, let's see if we can get some guys to come out and gather at a network happy hour. And the first event had about 50 people show up. And that's how Better Brothers got started, by text message and email and Facebook posts, to just reach out to guys and say, come out on a Wednesday night, let's gather and figure out what's going on in the community and what's missing. So Better Brothers LA was started out of the need for community amongst the Black LGBTQ plus community. So that's my version. Vincent, what's your version?
I mean, I think that's actually pretty good. I'd 100% concur.
Yeah, I was actually at closing ceremony for Catch, and I've met Jewel several times. She's a big inspiration in the LA community. What she's done for AIDS and healthcare in general for the color community is just amazing. Um, so there's been a lot of upheaval in the world lately, to say the least. Racism has reared its head, I think, even more than usual. You know better than I. We'll talk about that in a minute. Classism, denigration, and that's not even mentioning what's going on with all the politics and, I don't know how to say it, some of the whack jobs that we currently have in Congress. It's really troubling. But do you feel that we are moving in the right direction when it comes to racism and equity? I mean, if you look back to, I think it's been 5-6 years since you started Better Brothers, but do you feel, looking back to what things are like then, do you feel there's been improvement? Are we moving in the right direction?
That's a.
Is that
Should
a
I
tough
start
question?
that, Scott?
Maybe it's a mixed
No,
bag.
it's an incredibly loaded question.
Yeah, it is.
But I would say that in as much as one could potentially try to answer that, I would say yes. I do feel like there is definitely positive movement forward. But I'm also one who believes that forward movement is oftentimes incremental and oftentimes involves steps back. And I think what we are seeing, if we look not so much just over the last 5 years, but probably more over the last 10 to 15 years, is we're seeing forward steps and then a step back, 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And I think it is in some respects a nation that is dealing with its past and its future and figuring out how to sort of reconcile the two. And I think that in the larger scheme for the country, I think that's a good thing. I think in the moment it can feel tense and awkward and uncomfortable and frustrating and scary for lots of people. But I think this is the type of work that needs to occur in America if we are to be truly the country that we proclaim to be and what our Constitution says. If we're really to live up to those words, then I think the kind of work that is occurring and has been occurring over the last 15 or so years really needs to occur. And we need to all settle in for this sort of awkward period that I think is going to occur for a while until we really, I think, get into the work.
Yeah.
And I would like to just piggyback off of what Vincent said. I think over this last year with the pandemic, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, we actually saw, I would say, the younger generation, well, everyone, like come together and speak up. So I think there's definitely been progress, but also in those crowds were all races, all gender identities. Everyone was out fighting for what's right. So I feel like, yes, there has been progress, but as Vincent said, then sometimes there's a step back. Like I find it interesting now as more LGBTQ plus individuals are comfortable coming out and speaking their truth and being who they are. Now the narrative has changed. It's like, why everybody got to announce they're coming out? And I guess it's like, okay, when we weren't saying who we were, there was a problem. Now that people are saying, okay, saying I'm gay or I'm transgender, I'm bisexual, and now the question is like, well, why do you have to tell everybody? So it's very, it's interesting. But we're trying to encourage people to be themselves and live in their truth. Now others are like, well, why we need to know? So I think, from civil rights movement, protesting, there's definitely been change, but there's still a lot of work to do. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, I definitely feel things are changing for the better. And back to what Vincent said about it being a kind of ebbs and flows, I suppose, ups and downs. I definitely agree with that. Um, the the protesters, like you said, are very mixed backgrounds, all colors, genders, gender identities. And I think that another big thing that's helping, in addition to the protests and the fact that we're seeing so much diversity in the protests, is the portrayal in the media. The stories now that you're seeing on television and in film and in books are, it kind of used to be that they were the black story told by the white man, you know what I mean? And now I think you're starting to see the black story and the story of color. Although I have to say the black story is getting a lot, overwhelmingly more than Latin and Asian at this point. But the writers, the producers, the directors, the actors, it's them that do the productions, and I don't think you saw that before. And I think that helped. It's probably a cyclical thing, but I think that helped drive all of these different parts of society to those protests and rally, because now they're understanding, the story that's different, but it's real, it's the truth, right? What do you how do you feel about that?
One thing that comes to mind is that we are living in the technology generation, and information is literally at your fingertips. And while I agree, there's just so much more content, either from the sort of traditional entertainment industry, but there's also just content and information and engagement because of the internet and the way young people use that internet to engage with each other. That really I think, breaks down some of the barriers that I think existed before and made it much more difficult for communities, various different communities, to sort of engage with each other. And so I think, while I agree with you that the sort of traditional entertainment industry and the way in which it is, um, communities of color and particularly Black folk have sort of moved into that genre more firmly, has definitely made a tradition, or excuse me, has made a difference. But I think that's certainly coupled by and maybe equaled by just the fact that young people have access to such information real time, and they communicate in a way that breaks down barriers in a way that we've just never seen before in this country and probably in the world. And I think that has helped to sort of like create a space where Black kids and white kids and Latino kids and Asian kids just see the world a lot more without sort of like other people's context and other people's lenses. And so when they see a wrong, it's a wrong for them, and so they're going to protest because it's a wrong. And I think they're much more open to looking at things without as much of other people's thoughts and perspectives if they see something that they genuinely believe is wrong. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that. The internet does all kinds of crazy things, but I think this is one of the ways in which it is really helping to move our country and the world forward.
Very good points, all of them. I recently watched on YouTube the Truth Awards. I think it was the sixth year. I think it was your last Truth Awards that were held last year, and I couldn't help but notice Zaya Wade when I watched the video. And for those who don't know, and I think most of you probably do, Zaya is a young girl, daughter of former basketball player Dwayne Wade, and she came out as transgender. I don't know, did she come out shortly before the awards? I don't know how long it's been. She's pretty young.
But yeah, maybe it was 3 to 4 months prior to the awards.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like it was pretty. Yeah. So I have a clip of Zaya's father, Dwayne, speaking at the Truth Awards before presenting the Business Leadership Award to Jason Bolden and Adair Curtis. Let's take a listen.
When our 8-year-old daughter, Zaya Wade, came home and said she had something to tell us, when she came out to us as a family, we admit that we weren't educated on the LGBTQ plus community as we should have been. So we immediately picked up the phone and reached out to our good friends, Jason and Adair. They helped us navigate the right language to use, the questions to ask, and what to listen for. They also reminded us to make sure Zaya knew her community and felt the love and support inside and outside of her home. For working closely with Zaya to design her room in our homes to make sure that her most authentic self was represented and that her bedroom felt like her sanctuary. Now that may seem small, but them taking the time to make sure Zaya felt seen and heard as she created her own space for us was key. It was key to Zaya's comfort and her confidence. And along the way, they don't know this yet, but they became her trusted, self-chosen godfathers. Yeah, y'all just found that out. We know how much money y'all make.
I thought that was incredible, listening to him speak. The combination of him and what he did, especially when you add in the fact that this is a pro basketball player, it's like, it's just amazing. So I don't know which one was more touching, him or Zaya. They both their stories are just amazing. Tears were shed by Jason and Adair. Zaya really put herself out there, very bold and brave, very impactful, and very much changes people. So I think Zaya's story is a good example of why we're moving forward. Because people like Zaya are affirming themselves, putting themselves out there, and people like Dwayne, you having him on top of that is just amazing. I don't know if you wanted to say anything. I'm getting ready to switch to something else with Amanda Gorman, but any comments on that Truth Awards show? But
I do. I think Dwayne, as well as Gabrielle, as well as Zaya, Jason and Adair. Like, I think young kids in the LGBTQ plus community need love and support, and they also need vocal allies. And I think one of the biggest things as a Black gay man, having your father say, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to speak out for you, I'm going to love you because you're my child publicly makes a big difference. And I think the example that Dwayne, as well as Gabrielle, as well as the family, embracing Zaya is important. I think it's important for all kids, regardless of color, identity. But I think truly for the Black LGBTQ plus community, hopefully allows parents to say, I can love my child, I can be proud of my child, and that's important. So representation, I think we talked about this earlier, being able to see yourself and having that support system is really important. I feel like to the longevity of kids. I mean, I have friends or associates and friends that, you know, to this day in our 40s still struggle with sharing with their family that they're gay or don't engage with their family about their lifestyle. So for Zaya to have such support at a young age, hopefully, you know, when she becomes of a certain age, you know, she, you know, will be able to look back and say, wow, I've been able to um, have love my entire life. So.
Well said. Amanda Gorman. I mean, I thought she was amazing. I mean, I think for many of us, she was the highlight of the inauguration, and she was the Time magazine just came out. I just got it, I think, yesterday, and she is on the cover. There's an interview that Michelle Obama gave to her, and I just wanted to point out a couple of quotes that were in the magazine. The one on the left is Amanda's quote.
So real quick, John. So what's weird about the segues of this segment is that Jason Bolden actually styled Amanda for this cover. So it's just funny that you would talk about Jason and Adair with Zaya and then go into Amanda, and I'm looking at the picture and I'm like,
you're thinking of Jason.
Yeah, but if you go to Jason's Instagram page, you will actually see some behind the scene footage of him dressing her for this cover. So sorry, go ahead.
Wow, no, and now that you say that, Amanda, I can't remember where I saw this, but an interview with her somewhere. She talks about her hair and how intentional, you know, her hair was, the way that she did it and the way what she wore. She wanted to put herself out there as a person of color. The cover left is her quote, and I think this fits along with this whole idea of diversity without total assimilation. On the left side, she says, unity that actually moves us towards the future means that we accept our differences, we embrace them, and we lean into that diversity. And this so much makes me think of Zaya, too. It's not linking arms without questioning what we're linking arms for. It's unity with purpose. So that's Amanda, a quote from the interview that Michelle Obama did with her. And then on the right is Ibram Kendi's quote, which I thought was really good. He wrote an essay in Time magazine. I think it's called The Black Renaissance. And his quote, here's a piece. He said, "We are living in a time of a new renaissance, what we are calling the Black Renaissance. If the Harlem Renaissance stirred Black people to see themselves, if the Black arts movement stirred people to love themselves, then the Black Renaissance is stirring Black people to be themselves, totally, unapologetically, freely." And that really is a good segue into the Truth Awards. How did you, the name, the Truth Awards, how did that, did you really have to think hard about that? How did that come about?
Ooh, I don't even know how we came about the name.
It's a great name, by the way.
The idea was literally behind acknowledging individuals in the Black LGBTQ plus community for their contributions to society and to work. And I think somehow I don't know how we fell on the name, but the goal behind the award show was just making sure people were living their truth and being recognized for being visible in whatever part of their life or career in which they were being honored. And so, yeah, I don't know how we came on the name, but Vincent, do you remember? Name?
I don't remember how we came on the name. It was
So it probably
just a
just popped
conversation
right
sitting.
in. It sounds like there wasn't a whole lot of thought. Which, I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. It just was. It was just there, probably. So I think last year's awards were live. I think you just missed.
Yes.
Right.
About 3 days.
What's that?
By days. The closing, literally the closing of the whole country occurred within days of the Truth Awards last year.
That's what I thought, because I was looking at the date of the awards, and I was thinking, wow, I'm surprised they were able to do it. And so, are there going to be awards this year? What are the plans, if any?
So we are doing the Truth Awards this year. It will be virtual, and they are scheduled to air on March 20th, Saturday, March 20th. So yes, there will be a Truth Awards this year. A little smaller, a bit more condensed, but it's something we couldn't let lapse for a year. And there are too many individuals who should be recognized, and also there are young people who receive scholarships every year as a result of the Truth Awards, and we wanted to make sure that continued as well.
My dog is scratching at the door, so you may hear some scratching. This isn't the first interview where I've had dogs scratching. It wasn't mine the last time, but just to let everyone know. Oh man! So before we end, how can people who are interested in Better Brothers get involved?
So they can actually visit our website, betterbrothersla.com. They can follow us on Instagram at betterbrothersla, and then on Twitter at @BBrothersLA, and then Facebook, The Truth Awards. So website, betterbrothersla.com, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Okay. So thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
No problem.
So that's it for this time. See you next time.